brilliant minds when it comes to African affairs. I'll start my good sister, Sister Ayayi Fubara Eneli Esquire. How are you, sis?
Doing wonderful, sir. How are you? I'll take that promotion. I don't think I've earned it yet, but listen,
It's all good.
With Trump's administration, you don't need any credentials. You just get titles.
Yep, 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 yep.
Well, this is a DEI free zone, so everybody here is what's their weight in gold. Speaking of gold, the I mean, he needs no introduction. He is a brilliant journalist.
Yeah, Santo
Uh,
San.
yeah, so he's also the author of this remarkable book, which I should tell you, subsequent copies are coming out soon.
Yes.
And with that said, as is usually custom, news where you're at, starting with a sister. Can you hear me?
I think probably Comrade and I would have the same news.
Yeah, we can hear you. You froze for a second, but
Yes,
you're
can you
good now.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm in a hotel in Nashville, so hopefully the system works with me here. But the news all over the United States was definitely the No King protests that took place all across the country.
Mhm.
And if anyone has not had a chance to look at some of the footage, some of the pictures that are coming out, even the mainstream media could not ignore the outpouring of people. Just I guess they've had enough. And
Mm.
so, conservatively speaking, they're saying about 7 million people across the country came
Wow.
out. And in a country where you have as much apathy as we do, and then you just have other things that are always going on. People have to work, or you have children, or you're concerned about um, how the Trump administration will react and whether people are going to be unfairly locked up and so on and so forth. To have that kind of um, those kind
Response.
of numbers coming
Mm.
out to say enough of the fascism. This is not the country we want. I think it sends a very loud and clear message to the current grand old party
Mm.
that their gig may be up if this is sustained. And of course, they immediately try to find a way to. I'm not sure where the echo is coming from,
Go on.
but they immediately tried to find a way to characterize the protests. First of all, using Antifa. And for anyone who is hearing that Antifa and getting concerned, Antifa just means you're anti-fascism. You're an anti-fascist. It is not a bad thing. We should actually all be embracing being
Anti-fascist.
anti-fa, so to speak. But then claiming it's a hate America rally. So these are the ways that they try to manipulate people's minds and manipulate the narrative. But I think they were on the losing end yesterday, and it'll be interesting to see how people organize beyond this. But that is certainly the news. So here in Nashville, there was a No Kings protest in my community where I live in. There was a No Kings protest all across the country and in so many parts, even in red states. I saw some pictures from Idaho, and they had thousands and thousands of people out in the streets. So we'll see
How that plays
how
out.
the GOP responds moving forward. I guess since they have now bought the Dominion voting machines, they're just going to find more creative ways to use technology in addition to the courts and everything else to suppress the votes. And then, of course, we have the Supreme Court that is
Hearing
that
oral
heard
arguments.
arguments on oh yeah, oral arguments on the Voting Rights Act and whether they're going to completely gut it. And we know which way Brett Kavanaugh leans. I would say probably Alito and the man in blackface, um, Clarence Thomas. So it'll be interesting to see how the Supreme Court rules on that. But Katanji Brown is definite. She came out swinging in terms of just really addressing the gravity of this case and its implications for this country being able to more effectively create an appetite system
Okay.
where, regardless of what happens within Democrats and who to everybody else.
Okay. We look out and see how that will transpire. Brother Milton.
Okay, very good. So sister covered essential all the essential points. Antifa, of course, they play on that word because it sounds Arabic, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that underlying racism is just remarkable. The numbers were very important because the numbers shows the administration that they're definitely on the wrong course and the people have had enough. You see? So it was very good that the numbers are like that. The numbers also sends a warning to ICE, right? Even the individual operatives who are sent out there, now they know the kind of hostility they actually face. So that may also eventually start tampering their behavior. And then, of course, the language that people use. People were cursing out President Trump, swearing at him, the most foul, I've never heard such foul language, right? So obviously he understands that because he can relate to what people on the streets are saying. So that was very important as well. I think those are the only points that I can actually add. I think Sister covered all the essential parts.
Okay. Here it's a case of football. What do I mean by that? The football team from Israel, Maccabi Tel Aviv,
Right.
Maccabi Haifa were hoping to come to England in November to play a local team in the center part of London, Aston Villa. And the local police force and the crowd security group decided against it based on what has transpired previously a couple of months ago in Amsterdam, where this same set of fans went around beating up people of Arab descent, pulling down, just basically destroying street furniture, pulling down Palestinian flags when they see them. And for some reason, the prime minister has stepped in to sort of question the judgment of the local police force. Now, the question is, the local police force is looking at the matter through the lens of security and safety. But for some reason, anti-Semitism has come into it, wherein this set of fans have a history of anti-Arab behavior, racist, xenophobic, and you name it. So the justification for even wanting a review of what the local police force has said is what is making the rounds in newspaper here.
Right. Of course, I mean, the prime minister fears that if it succeeds, it will spark other chain reaction in other countries.
In terms of boycott.
Eventually could end up being like how South Africa was banned at some point from the Olympics.
Yes,
and that's what's at stake here. So did the local police ban the game itself or say their fans are not allowed to come?
The away fans are not allowed to attend.
But the game will be played?
The game will go ahead, but the away fans are not allowed to. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So again, speaking of news, which is what we do here, news review, there's been lots of news on the African scene. And without further ado, let's start. First, we go to Radio France International and its take on the passing of Raila Odinga. And what can we say? As they will say in the African space, they would say a tree in the forest has fallen and we're fast losing trees. Raila Odinga, an enduring voice of Kenyan democratic struggle, dies age 80. Kenya's former prime minister and veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga has died following a decades-long career that defined the country's struggle for democracy. There he is. And I'll just read a bit. Raila Odinga, one of the defining figures of modern Kenya, has died at the age of 80 while traveling in India. You've read the story. What's your take when you heard the news?
All right, sister, you want to go ahead?
No, you can take this.
Okay, so what is not mentioned in any of the articles, and you can look in any of the mainstream articles, is the reason why he never became president.
You came out swinging. That was the question I was going to pose to you, but go ahead.
I mean, it's clear that he won the 2007 election.
Yeah.
Instead, he had to go into a power sharing arrangement with Mwai Kibaki, and he became prime minister because of the bloodshed that was, had escalated all over Kenya.
Was that with the son of the old man, Uhuru Kenyatta? He went into. Was he Kenyatta or Mbaki that he went into coalition with?
Kibaki, right?
Okay.
Mbaki.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then in 2022, he won
against
but there was no way with the United States, and the reason is very clear. They never say it because he was the son of a socialist, so he was a suspected socialist as well. His father, Raila Odinga,
yes,
Jaramogi, had been Kenya's first vice president, and under Jomo Kenyatta.
Yeah.
And what's that?
No, she was about
Odinga.
Yes. A very ringy tone to it. So what happened is he wanted land reform. He wanted the land to be returned to the peasant farmers and their descendants from whom the British had stolen the land. And Kenyatta did not want that. Kenyatta had a deal with imperialism, and Kenya became what it is today, the epicenter of corporate congregation in East Africa and in Africa as well, you can actually say. So that's why his father was sidelined. His father actually was instrumental in getting Jomo Kenyatta released by the British.
Correct.
So they won't allow Odinga to be a part of mainstream Kenyan politics thereafter. And of course, to them, Kenyatta was very much acceptable. And at some point, perhaps, had Kenyatta not pushed Odinga all the way, he would have been acceptable as well. The people who were not acceptable were the ones who actually fought in the forest, you see?
Correct.
People like Dedan Kimathi, who was executed in 1957. Had he lived, it would have been interesting to see how Kenya's politics might have played out. Because people that led insurrections and who lived until the end, in most cases, were the ones who came into power in African countries post-colonialism. So I think the West kept associating Raila with Jaramogi Odinga, and that's why he was unacceptable as president of Kenya. And that's why he never became president. So that's the element that I wanted to add. If you notice, in the last election, I think we discussed this before, the 2022 vote, about 4 weeks before the vote, every article dealing with Kenya's upcoming election kept referring, in the New York Times, kept referring to Raila as a socialist, as somebody who was trained in East Germany. Yeah, of course.
East Germany.
They were the ones who were giving scholarships to African countries.
Yeah.
So he went and he studied engineering, and they don't even mention that he studied engineering. He didn't go to study radical Marxist politics or anything,
Yeah.
So they kept aligning him that way. And even though many people believe he won, they gave a clear signal that we would prefer that Ruto be sworn in as president.
Mm. So the sins of the father follows the son.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Sister?
But I would agree with everything Comrade has said. That yes, he studied to become a mechanical
Mhm.
engineer. That's what he was, and he came back to his country. Unlike many of us who go abroad
Yeah,
and study and end up staying in that country, or those who leave because they cannot survive in their country because they've been
Mm.
exiled, and
yeah,
that those stories abound as well.
yeah.
Just
And then,
something to think
sister,
about. So
sorry to interrupt you, because you said something that
yeah.
I should have also mentioned. He went back, of course, at a tremendous cost, given how they were already treating his father. His father eventually was locked up, and he himself, of course,
Was locked up.
ended up being locked up and tortured and beaten severely. So I'm sorry I left that out, but please continue.
No, I'm glad that you added that piece. So this is someone who lived his words. He wasn't just speaking about our liberation. He was willing to put his body, so to speak, on the line, and he paid dearly for it. But having said that, I would say, um, I give thanks that he lived to see 80,
Yes,
Mm.
because people as radical as who are considered as radical as he is, do not
true,
tend
true,
to
true.
live that long. And perhaps he was allowed to live that long because of some of the concessions that he made,
True,
which,
true,
by the
true.
way, cost him some support from some of the people who really wanted him to
Mm.
to become president. And yet politics makes for strange
Hmm.
bedfellows.
Veterans,
you,
yeah.
you try to figure out, okay, can I do more good inside or
Right,
outside, and so I'm not judging. These are calls that you make while you're in the game on the field, and it's easy for someone who's sitting on the sidelines to say, "Oh, I would have done it this way, I would have done it that way." But he ran for president 5 different times:
Mm.
1997, 2007, 2013, 2017, 2022. It's a wonder that he was never assassinated. He did remain influential, not just in Kenya, but in terms of regional diplomacy as well. He helped to, at least attempted to mediate the South Sudan crisis as recently as 2025. Um, he also, of course, unfortunately, it was he didn't succeed in this instance either, but he was also trying to get a position with the AU
right.
Commission, and was rejected for that, and from that, and possibly because the this was in February of this year. The rank and file African leaders are still not ready for someone who is not just kowtowing and just bowing down to the imperialists. He worked really hard to try and build bridges. So, of course, you talked about the handshake agenda, I guess, between him and Uhuru Kenyatta. Um, and so, all in all, a great man has passed. I listened to his wife's comments, and her calling for us to mourn him, but in a solemn way. It doesn't have to be violent. I looked at even the names that he gave his children. So his first son, who's deceased, he named Fidel after Fidel Castro. So I guess he gave some more evidence as to why they would call him a socialist. Um, he named he named one of his daughters after Winnie Mandela. Um, so
So,
he
so he
wasn't
knew he was
exactly
never
helping.
going to be president.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly helping his
Had he named his son John F. Kennedy, he had a better chance.
Yes.
Or Eisenhower.
We are grateful for the example that he has left for us all. Yes. And
Yes.
may he rest in power and return. Yes.
Yeah. All
Yes.
right.
And
I
Yes.
just,
for those who are
go ahead.
interested, he has a biography. He has a biography that you can, access and read more about him, because it's important that we really understand our
The
leaders, understand
motivations.
what worked, what didn't work, understand the tactics that have been used against them. His autobiography, The Flame of Freedom, is one that, I would recommend that we all take a look at, particularly as we celebrate his life.
All right, so
Yes.
just quick addition. Also, in that same vein, people should also read his father's book, Not Yet Uhuru, which means not yet independence. Yes, read that book. The same critique that he had, that the sister mentioned, in terms of how he became accommodating and worked with the powers that be, is the same, of course, criticism that Mandela also had uh, in terms of not going the way with the struggle to regain the land. And then finally, in terms of why he never became executive chair of the African Union, France actually sent its foreign minister to several African countries to campaign against them supporting Raila's candidacy, which is a shame, because what he wanted to do was to integrate Africa's infrastructure system, not so much even the politics, just focusing on the infrastructure. And even that, France is afraid of.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to add.
Okay. Speaking of France's influence, that bleeds into our next story, which is from Cameroon. Cameroon had an election over the week, and the news story is coming from the Financial Times, the money paper. Cameroon opposition leader claims victory in bid to unseat world's oldest president. Issa Tishme Bakari cites unofficial exit polls to declare landslide win over 92-year-old Paul Biya ahead of official results, he says. And he goes a step further. Mr. Bakari has declared himself the winner of Cameroon's presidential election in what looks like a high-stakes attempt to seize the initiative in his effort to unseat Paul Biya after 43 years in power. Yes. So what do we make of this?
All right. So obviously there's something very critically important here. He claimed victory, and according to Cameroon law, it's illegal for anybody to claim victory prior to the election commission. And he's not yet been arrested. So that, I think, is strong enough indication to tell me that there's going to be transition in Cameroon. There's either going to be transition, or they might escalate the civil war, which they already have. Right now, they have basically north, south. Now it's going to be north and in between and the center. So that alternative is just, of course, we don't want that. It's unimaginable, but it's not impossible. So I think, Mr. 94-year-old, stay in Switzerland where you live anyway, and let the country transition. And it's so ironic. He's been there so long. He's 94. So, and this Bakari used to be one of his ministers, actually. And they just, he just parted ways just months ago. But he's seen as something as fresh, a breath of fresh air, even though he himself is 79, but he's seen as a youth. He's a youth compared to.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was definitely going to bring up that point. Like, my goodness.
Go ahead. The floor is all yours.
Over to you, sister.
Okay. So I'm gonna refer to the last story and then bring up this story as well. So Odinga dies in India. Biya spends more of his time in Switzerland.
Yep. I'm glad you're going there. Thank you.
African leaders spend literally, I'm sure we're over millions right now, of our hard-earned money and money that we borrow, so we're paying interest on healthcare services in other countries, instead of building the infrastructure in our own countries. It is a tragedy.
Yeah, and it's a loud statement.
So just and I mean, it's you can you it's written into the budget, like, oh, I'm going to London for so and
Yep.
so, and the government will pay for you to travel, for whoever is traveling with you to travel, for their stay while they're
Yep.
supposedly taking care of you, for all of the pounds or dollars or whatever you're paying. It is ridiculous.
Yes. Yes. Remember Shehu Shagari, Nigerian president,
Yeah. Buhari
and
as
then
well.
Buhari as well.
Buhari, all of them. And the governors do it as well. The ministers do it as well. That is a huge financial leak for African
Yeah.
countries. So I just need to point that out.
No, that's a
Now,
big
coming back
story.
to this,
That should be a standalone story. You're right.
coming back to this issue, first of all, it does look like, for all intents and purposes, there is a somewhat of a wind of a wind of change that is starting to sweep across Africa a little bit. It's we can feel the wind blowing.
Mhm.
Now, unfortunately, we're still talking about octogenarians in most of these
Yeah.
cases, because even with Odinga, it's 2025, he dies at 80. So when he was running in 2022, he was 77 years old.
Correct.
Where are the young people, and why do our elders not see that part of their role as elders is to
Nurture.
train up the next generation, and to then give room and then step into that position of elder statesman,
Right.
or stateswoman, where you give advice, as opposed to you want to suck up all the energy. And of course, there's another story we're going to cover that we'll get into that even more. And so I do hope that we really are going to see a transition. I don't know that BI is going to, and his people who have been used to that, they're entitled now to money flowing into their personal accounts without check. People don't usually like it when you stop the gravy train. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out. Haven't seen elections in Nigeria. I know
Mm.
how easy it is to stuff ballot boxes.
Oh.
I know how easy it is to go to a rural area where people that cannot eat and basically tell them, I'm going to give you the equivalent of $1, right?
Oh.
But that dollar is more than they have seen in 3, 4, 5, 6 months,
Mm.
and tell them, if you want to get this dollar, just go and vote here. So the fact that it takes 15 days for the election to be completely tabulated and the results announced, a lot can happen in 15
15
days.
days. Yeah.
A whole lot can happen in 15 days.
Right. Yeah.
So
And it's
we wait with bated breath, but we'll see.
and the 15 days was selected deliberately for that purpose, to give
Mm.
them time to manipulate. You don't need 15
Yeah.
days even if you're counting, one vote a day, that's nonsense.
So
Uh,
speaking. So speaking
so
of
I
that.
like what you pointed out in terms of the role of the elders, because that used to be the system even. If you
Mhm.
go back to our traditional systems of governments, the elders had the most highest level of esteem and respect because they earned it, right? They would not be running the show at that point. They become like senior advisors
ISIS,
to
yeah.
the next crop of leaders, right?
Mm. Mm.
We don't have that. We inherited the Eurocentric, corrupt, money-based politics. So that's part of the problem. Now, the other thing that might actually happen in Cameroon is very possible they could have a military coup as well.
Yeah.
You're right. The people that are eating off the gravy train don't like giving up power. It's possible that some of the generals, could come in, but then it's also possible that the junior officers could come in, either preempting the generals or coming and pushing the generals out if the generals take control first.
Mm. Okay.
Like Tinubu said, it's my turn.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, he did say that.
Yeah.
Quick question. We've not touched on the neo-colonial aspect of the present debacle that is Cameroon. Would that also play into the results of the elections?
Okay, I think that is sort of tied into one of the stories that you have also
Yeah.
flagged for discussion. And if judging by that story
Mm.
and judging by what's already happened in West Africa,
Yeah.
I think the French know what they can chew and what they can no longer chew. Right.
Okay, so we'll save it for.
I would say that in terms of that too, looking at the fact that this article was in the Financial Times,
Yeah.
and looking at the fact that they mentioned the age of, they led with the age of Bia, but buried the age of Bakari.
Right.
He may at this point be the one that they're choosing. Listen, they always have a way of setting you. So you read it and it's like, okay, in this story for them, Bakari is the good guy. So this like the story has shifted a little. The tides have shifted. So right now, for the money guys, um, yeah,
Mr.
they've chosen.
Mr. 80 years old is preferable to 94.
Yeah. They've made a choice. Yeah. So that
Okay.
might help him, because that
Yes,
the imperialists do not really see him as too much of a threat, because if they did, that story would have been written very differently.
absolutely.
Okay, speaking of stories written differently, we go to Cote d'Ivoire. And Cote d'Ivoire is also in the throes of an election. And they've gone, and the story comes from Radio France International. And it's important to read through the lens of the French because of their, supposed interest to see what it is they consider important. So Cote d'Ivoire's opposition calls for daily protest ahead of presidential election. Cote d'Ivoire's two main opposition parties called on Sunday for daily protests less than 2 weeks before a presidential election in which their two main candidates are barred from running. And so I'll just read a bit. At a march in Abidjan on Saturday, which has been banned by authorities before security forces dispersed crowds with tear gas, at least 237 people were arrested, according to Interior Minister Diomande. Cote d'Ivoire's government earlier this month imposed sweeping bans on meetings, rallies, protesting the exclusion of leading critics of President Alassane Ouattara from 25th October vote. Ex-leader Laurent Gbagbo and Tidjane Thiam, who lead the West African country's largest opposition parties, are amongst the figures who have been prevented from challenging the 83-year-old Ouattara's bid for a fourth term. Okay, here we go again. So, over to you.
All right. So I'm also reading some signals in what is left out. And so I want to sisters and brothers who follow this podcast, in addition to reading the words, you have to read what is being left out in stories. And in order to understand what is being left out, that's where the importance of history comes in. So I always tell our people, we cannot be liberated without knowing history. History allows you to put things in broader context, and then you start saying to yourself, wait a minute, why is this not being mentioned in this article? Just like the way we critiqued the previous article to this one. Why is the age of Bakari not emphasized and all that? So if you start spotting stuff like that, you can develop a skill of devising a better understanding of where things might flow or are flowing. So in this case, the opposition is led by Thiam and Gbagbo. They don't mention that Gbagbo was the president whom France claimed had rigged elections, and they intervened militarily to remove him and take him away to the International Criminal Court and install Qatar as the president of Ivory Coast. So that background has disappeared, you see, because now Gbagbo has been rehabilitated.
Yeah.
And why would you rehabilitate? You only rehabilitate if you want to replace, you see? So that's one thing. And then the other opposition leader, Thiam, they don't mention that, but this guy made his reputation at Credit Suisse. The guy is the candidate of Wall Street. The financial markets love this guy, right? So, but they don't mention that because that might diminish his credentials a little bit. And not as a people's leader, but as an instrument of Western financial capital markets. So me, in reading those, those two or three things, gives me an indication that they've also come to the conclusion that Alassane Ouattara is also replaceable at this point.
Okay, sister?
I'm so glad that you gave that history, because as I was reading it, I'm saying, okay, what is their goal with this article? Because they don't just write articles on Africa to just inform.
Absolutely not.
There's
Okay,
some propaganda.
time out. Sister and brothers, no, those are profound words. Whenever Western media, major corporate media write articles about Africa, it's never ever to inform. So once you keep that in mind, and then you can start looking for what is the true agenda. So I'm glad you said that. Okay.
Okay.
We are one today.
No, it's true.
We are absolutely
I'm
one,
telling you,
brother.
it's true. I never thought of it that way, but it's obviously in the back of my mind.
Because I was like, what is your point? Okay, so you're using your international space to validate that they're calling for protests in advance. So are you trying to delegitimize the elections before they happen? Are you trying to create enough chaos where maybe another civil war or something breaks out? Like, okay, let me go back and see who has mineral interests here, who benefits from chaos in Cote d'Ivoire. What is your actual game plan here? Because it's never about our peace and prosperity, ever.
No.
So why would they amplify the voices of these leaders that they previously, you already gave the background? Why amplify their voices while they're calling for protests, when typically you're going to be trying to say, no, let's see how the electoral process plays out? What is the end goal? And I don't have the answer yet, except that I know for certain it is not about the benefit of the people of Cote d'Ivoire. That there's another Cote d'Ivoire, that there is another agenda at play here, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. But when you are amplifying a voice that is calling for protests, and if there are rampant protests between now and October 25th, when they're supposed to have that that election, given what you see happening in other countries in this area, given what you see that just happened in Madagascar, what are you really aiming for? I don't know what the end game is here. And maybe it is that you put in so much chaos that you put in power stays on. I don't know. Brother, I don't know if you have more of an analysis on what their end game could possibly be.
Oh, no, I can't answer that. They're being kicked out of I know for sure that this time they're not going to send any intervention force to keep somebody in power, like they did when they came and removed Gbagbo. Those days of French imperialism, that type of gunboat outright, I think those days are clearly over.
Okay. So could he?
But now they just have to send drones, though. They don't have to send people.
I think that would also cause havoc to them, because they have a lot of commercial interest still. They have storefronts. And if people start attacking your storefronts physically, then it'll be like a total lose-lose for them,
Okay. Yeah. So one other thing, could it also be a way of managing change, managing transition in light of what happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Guinea?
Definitely. And the end result is still capitulation. Because that's not the way France had done it for decades since Africa's so-called independence. So when you go to a situation where you now have to start to manage imperialism, it's a long way from having military bases in those countries, which is what, France had,
Okay.
I think Gabon,
which might explain
Gabon
why
might be the only one now. Gabon, I think, is the only one now, maybe, with bases.
Yeah, which might explain why France has gone through how many prime ministers in the last 2 years?
It's amazing. It's this aura of such a mighty superpower is now being exposed, that you were enjoying all this because you were exporting resources from Africa. And now that exploitation is diminishing, it's becoming very difficult for you to even have stable governments. The economic woes are the ones that are weakening the governments. The economic woes are becoming much more pronounced as the exploitation of Africa also diminishes. I don't know why any of these media don't want to draw a correlation between what is very obvious,
But it'd be difficult to do that. That would be like kicking one of their own while they're down. So
Yep.
You know, I know this is not the focus of our story, and I know we have limited time. Just real quick though, as we're thinking through this, I'm wondering how this plays out in terms of the EU now trying to minimize their dependence on United States and defense contractors or defense companies from the United States for weapons to defend themselves. I understand they're putting a massive amount of money towards contracts from their own, if you will. But when you have countries like France who no longer can depend on certain amounts of income, it limits what they're able to do. And how that then plays into the felon in chief's
idea.
game plan here, which is to use money to control people. So you see where he's just told Colombia that he's going to cancel all aid to the country of Colombia because Petro came here and embarrassed him. And I think this year they had given like to not they, my taxpayer money, United States government approved by the Congress, which apparently is now just non-existent as a third arm of government,
Government.
had approved and had gotten $207 million in aid to Colombia. And so now Trump is saying unilaterally, I'm canceling everything because he has a personal issue with the current president. And so I'm wondering, to the extent that nations like France lose their ability to extort, exploit, just siphon money and resources out of
Africa.
Africa unchecked, how that weakens the EU and how that weakens their ability to in any way stand up to Trump and his authoritarianism with all of the money that the US has or pretends to have, and all the nuclear weapons. Just wondering how this plays out on a global level.
Well, we have to do our homework too. I mean, because obviously this is a potential for African countries to take advantage, right? But we cannot take advantage so long as we have the Paul Bias, we have the Qataras, we have the Musevenis, who's also 81 and preparing to steal a vote in January. And I think it's going to be difficult for him, just judging by the size of the young people coming out to Bobby Wine's campaigns. But this is the moment for us to actually start now dictating the terms of what we want to be paid for our resources. These countries are going to go back to the pre-15th century level, when our economies were on par with them, or in fact, maybe we were ahead of them because we've always had resources, right? They're going to go back to that level, without a doubt. If we all get our act together and just stop this blatant exploitation. And then the United States, the United States does not want to face its own crises. The US, because of the concentration of wealth among such an elite, small minority, and no investment in education, no investment in healthcare, no investment in infrastructure, the United States, without a doubt, will not be able to withstand the competition from China, you see? And it's very obvious to most people by now. And that is the period where Africa should use that opportunity to keep growing, so long as we have competent leaders. I think we see a start with the guys in the alliance of the Sahel states. That is a start. And I think that's why we're seeing this being replicated in other African countries now. I mean, I don't think young Africans have a particular adoration for the military taking over, but they want somebody who is not a puppet of the West and somebody who says, we are going to have the majority control of our resources and we're going to industrialize. And that's what these guys are saying. That's what is common amongst them, you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of the youth speaking up, we go to our final story, which again comes from Radio France International. And it's that France has evacuated Madagascar's president amid protest and army revolt. Madagascar's president, Andrea Rapoliliano, has been evacuated from the country by a French military plane as protest and a military mutiny threatens to topple his government, RFI has confirmed. And I'll just read a bit. The evacuation followed an agreement with French President Emmanuel Macron. French authorities said they were not intervening in Madagascar's internal crisis, which had rocked the country since 25th of September. The unrest began over widespread water and electricity cuts, but has grown into a nationwide movement demanding Rapoliliano's resignation. Security forces have used force to disperse demonstrations, while officers backing the protesters have taken control of the paramilitary gendarme. Your take in light of the previous stories, France again stepping in to the bridge?
All right. So I think that same plane may be parked somewhere near Ivory Coast now. And then, or actually Cameroon first. So it's parked near Cameroon. And then after that, its assignment might be to be parked somewhere close to the Ivory Coast. What I like the most about this story is actually just one thing.
Yeah.
That soldiers refused to fire on the protesters. And I hope this sends a signal to soldiers in every African country. That's not what you went to the military academy for.
Yeah.
But unfortunately in the past, soldiers, of course, much harm to African civilians, unarmed African civilians. You can't be doing what the apartheid racist military used to do against people in Soweto, people in Sharpeville, right? If it was horrific for Europeans to be doing it against Africans, it should not be less horrific when African soldiers do it to some other Africans. So I was really elated when I saw the soldiers driving with their armed vehicles and inviting civilians to come ride with them. And that obviously is when the president said he was going to make a speech. And he never made that speech because by that time he was on a plane, of course,
Okay. Sister?
He ran to his master.
Okay.
He didn't call any African leader.
That's when the truth is revealed,
Exactly. Like when you're a kid and you get your father upset or whatever, and you're about to get a spanking, what do? You run and go and hide behind your mother's skirts. For us, when my grandparents were around, we would go and hide behind our grandparents because we knew that our parents would never, challenge our, their elder. And and we were safe until my grandparents would have to go at some point go back to their own home. so so that the fact that as soon as the fire got hot, he immediately called these people, and of course they responded. He's been doing their bidding all this time, because otherwise also why would they respond and get him out that quickly? And so the fact that we have not really had sovereign nations continues to be exposed on a daily basis at this time. I want to just give a shout out to our young people. We keep talking about how, Africa has the youngest population, and the high rate of unemployment and so on and so forth. We have such enterprising young people in Africa who are just looking for an opportunity.
Thank you for saying that.
And I am glad that these young people are not waiting. They're not waiting on the elites anymore. They're not waiting on they're tired of our big English and all of this there, or French or whatever we're speaking. They're just like, you know what? We're going to make this happen. And they put their bodies on the line. They went out into the streets, and thank God, like he pointed out, that the military chose not to use violence against them, although clearly they were ready for that. And they've in turn, sided with them. Now, what happens in the interim? That's always the issue. I know that the military is saying elections in 2 years. But again, power has a way of corrupting people. You
Yeah.
get in there and you realize, oh, wait a second, this is what is in the treasury. I got a house to build. I got some more wives to marry, um,
Yeah.
some Maybachs to purchase. So, hopefully our young people can continue to keep them honest. But kudos to the young people of Madagascar. And for those of you who are absolutely surprised, yes, Madagascar is not just a movie, it is a country in Africa.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Hmm.
And it has a lot more than the dancing hippo
Yeah.
and the other animals. It is a
Yeah.
full blown country blessed with a lot of resources that has been under. No, seriously, even the stupid president, ex-president now, was trying to sell animals and things, trying to capitalize on this notion of Madagascar as this Disney concept or
Mhm.
whatever. And so, yeah, Madagascar is it's not Wakanda. It actually is a real country in Africa. I know that it comes as a surprise to some people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Just had to put that out there.
No, very good. You like what you said in terms of the young people in Africa being entrepreneurial. This is obvious to anybody that goes to the continent. I was talking to this French businessman a couple of years ago, and he told me that one of the things that astounded him when he visits African countries is the entrepreneurship of the young people and their creativity and imagination. So all they lack is seed capital. And he's
Yeah.
saying, even if these banks, instead of giving millions of dollars in loans to corrupt ministers who never repay the loans anyway, just seed these individuals with a few thousands of dollars, they would just, you know, grow up their enterprises. You know, he said
Mm.
he seeded somebody he met who, and I forgot how he was assembling the gadgets together to charge people's phones. Right? He
Mm.
created something which incorporated some solar energy and all that, and people would come and charge their phones and wait for it to be charged, and they would pay him.
Mm.
And he pitched the idea to this stranger, this French man who he just met.
Mm.
And the French guy seeded him so he could replicate those portals. And he made 10 of them. And, you know, from a young, you know, street guy, this guy had now become like a quote unquote businessman, you know? And
Mm.
that's just
Mm.
one example of multiple types of entrepreneurial projects that could be seeded for these young people. Uh,
I just want to point out the neo-colonial angle of this story. The fact that the guy hopped on a plane to France highlights one major problem. He's a dual citizenship. He's got dual citizenship. He's both French and
Hmm.
Malagasy,
mhm.
which in itself is a
Hmm.
problem. If you believe in your country, why are you holding the passport of another country? Where does your
Yep.
allegiance lie? That's one. Two is the fact that when you pointed out history earlier, people should not forget that Madagascar was where one young captain learned how people organized themselves when he saw how they organized and pushed out the French in 1973. And that
Yep.
captain was Captain Thomas Sankara. He saw the people organizing, and that was the basis of his questions to his own countrymen
Yep.
that look, there are young people over there organizing, and he saw the role of the military, which is what you alluded to. The military then did not fire on the demonstrators. So the
Right.
military now remember that they were on the side of the people. So this uh, movement of memory continues
Hmm.
among the African population. It is only when we get news articles like this that leaves out those important clues as to
Yep.
what happened previously. Instead, what they're doing is narrating what they want us, as the good sister said, not to inform us, but to tell us what it is our true reality is, whereas we know better. So I just
Yep.
Hmm.
wanted to add that.
Hold on.
So So that said, do you have any final thoughts? since we've come to the end of this week's
A luta continua.
And sister in Tennessee?
Just again, just grateful for you, grateful for the insights from Comrade Milton Allimadi.
Asante.
Brother,
And likewise. Likewise.
You blow my mind every time. I have to go read
Listen
more.
to
I
her.
realize how ignorant I am. Thank you for this opportunity. Brother Adesoji, thank you for your work.
No, thank
Asante
you.
sana.
Thank you for contributing. It's important work that we do because yes, the history books exist, but the history continues. The history plays out every day. The problem with the Western media is when they're talking about Africa, they leave out the history, and there is a big reason
But
why
it's not
they
a
do.
problem. They fulfill their function. It's up to us to decipher and hit back.
Yes.
One quick thing that I want to say.
Yeah.
So in Madagascar, the people, the army decided not to obey the orders of this corrupt president that they had. In the United States of America, where Trump and Hegseth are summarily firing so many of the top military leaders, Air Force, Naval, Coast Guard, Army, all of that. They're either firing them or making things you like either pledge allegiance to me or to that the people are resigning. The question is, will the army, will the military in the United States be able to, because the Supreme Court is bought and paid for. Unless we are able to have a free and fair election where we change what's happening with the Congress, they clearly have capitulated. They've given up their power. Yeah. So the one branch that is not actually recognized as a branch of government that might be able to stay the evil of this madman is the military.
Without a doubt. I mean, first of all.
And the question is, will they be able to rise up and actually, even though I have issues with the US Constitution, but will they be able to at least defend the Constitution as opposed to defending the agenda of these oligarchs using Trump as a puppet?
The answer is yes.
I don't know.
The answer is yes, from my perspective. You can only push trained generals that have earned their stripes, their badges, even in of course, clearly in operations that I totally oppose because all there was of imperialism.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they have paid within their own system what they call the dues. So to congregate all of them like that and have a guy who keeps a bottle of whiskey in his pocket, humiliate them like that, the so-called defense.
Who came from the National Guard? No offense, I got lots of friends in the National Guard, but now that is your defense secretary and is now making, wow.
Absolutely. So these generals are not robots, obviously, so they think about that. And there's a limit. I don't know what that limit is for this country yet, but I think there's a limit that he will not be allowed to cross. First of all, there are stories that January 6th alone, there were senior officers that refused his orders on that episode alone. So obviously that was a potential limit for that, you see?
Which is why he now had to gut that senior leadership because they weren't going along with it.
There are too many generals. There are too many generals. Yeah. There are too many generals, and that's a good thing about this country. The armed force is too big for one individual to control. So if he reaches that limit again, I would be not shocked if a few of them get on WhatsApp and say to themselves, obviously we know what we're going to do or not do, right? It's more likely
Well,
disobey
well, well, they
orders.
know because Hegseth apparently telegraphs everything on Signal. He's not even using. He's not even using the usual channels.
Yeah, yeah,
Apparently, anybody can figure out what's going on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you raise a good question, and my answer is yes. There's a limit that even he would not be able to cross. That's my assessment.
Okay. Thank you very much. And on that
See you next week.
optimistic note, I'll see you all next week. And until then, good night and God bless.
Asante sana. Be well.